The treatment of Soviet prisoners of war, POWs, by the Germans during World War II stands as a grim testament to the brutality and inhumanity of war. The German treatment of Soviet POWs was marked by a symbolic disregard for human life, driven by Nazi ideology, logistical challenges, and a brutal callous of war. At the outset of Operation Barbarossa, the German invasion of the Soviet Union in 1941, Nazi leadership declared that the war against the Soviet Union was a war of extermination. Driven by racial and ideological motives, this ideological backdrop laid the foundation for the dehumanization of Soviet POWs. Upon capture, Soviet POWs faced appalling conditions in German custody. Many were held into makeshift prison camps where they endured overcrowding, starvation, and exposure to harsh weather conditions. The Third Geneva Convention, which outlined standards for the treatment of POWs, was largely disregarded by the Germans, who viewed the Soviet soldiers as unworthy of humane treatment. The treatment of Soviet POWs was exacerbated by logistical challenges and the German army's lack of preparation for handling large numbers of prisoners. The rapid advance of the German forces into the Soviet territory overwhelmed the German logistical system, leading to a shortage of food, medical supplies, and basic necessities in POW camps. As a result, many Soviet POWs perished due to malnutrition, disease, and neglect. In addition to these logistical challenges, the German treatment of Soviet POWs was also influenced by a brutal callous of war. The Nazis regarded Slavic peoples, including Soviet POWs, as racially inferior and expendable. This racial ideology contributed to the high mortality rate among Soviet POWs, as the Germans prioritized the well-being of their own soldiers over the lives of their captured enemies. The systematic mistreatment of Soviet POWs by the Germans also extended to acts of violence and mass murder. In some cases, Soviet POWs were summarily executed by German forces, particularly during the chaotic early stages of Operation Barbarossa. Additionally, many Soviet POWs were subjected to forced labor under grueling conditions, contributing to a further suffering and death among captive soldiers. The treatment of Soviet POWs by the Germans during World War II stands as a dark chapter in human history of warfare, highlighting the depths of human cruelty and the devastating consequences of ideological extremism. The suffering endured by Soviet POWs at the hands of the Germans serves as a stark reminder of the horrors of war and the urgent need for respect for human dignity, even in the most dire circumstances. Furthermore, the treatment of Soviet POWs by the Germans reflected broader patterns of violence and oppression perpetuated by the Nazi regime throughout occupied territories. As the German army advanced into the Soviet Union, they implemented a policy of ruthless occupation, characterized by mass killings, forced labor, and the systematic destruction of entire communities. Soviet POWs were not only victims of German brutality, but also witnessed the atrocities committed against civilian populations, deepening their sense of despair and hopelessness. The treatment of Soviet POWs by the Germans during World War II continues to reverberate through the collective memory of nations and historical consciousness of humanity. The suffering endured by Soviet POWs serves as a solemn reminder of the fragility of human rights in times of human conflict.